right, we'll go and get started. Good morning. So welcome to the second of an ongoing sessions of forums to discuss our future at Lord of Life. And today's primary focus is on the survey results that we got last month, to talk a little bit about some of the options, or as those who are in the government trade space, between different options, and to foster communications and, again, small group dialogue and discussions at the end. So thanks for joining today, and your engagement is vital, and I actually do mean that. This is not just I am obligated to ask for your input. I actually want it. If you do, please come up to the mic so that those on YouTube or will be able to listen to your question as well. All right, so as the church moves forward, we need to re-energize the congregation and invest in the future. We're seeing that now as we're trying this month with the 2 live services each week, 1 at each campus, to see how that's working. We don't know yet what this future is going to look like, but together we will create this. And that's a key point that I want to point out is this is not the PLC's vision for this church. This isn't Pastor Lanny or Pastor Shannon's vision of this church. This is our vision of the church. And without your input, I can't make it work. It's as simple as that. And so that's why we do these forums. That's why we have the open communications. We try to share as much information as we have as we can, as quickly as we can. Because we have to trust in the Holy Spirit to lead us into that promising future. You have to have the faith of Matthew, to use today's read. You know, I don't know how I could, after being in a profession for 5, 10, 15 years, we don't know how old Matthew really was, to literally just see Jesus walk by and go, follow me. Okay, show of hands of how many people would be willing to do that at the drop of a hat. Yeah, exactly. And so, but it's the Holy Spirit that's driving this conversation, and that's what we want to keep in mind. All right, our current plan is continuing to restore the ministry, to maintain the 2 campuses for the 23 and 24 year. I want to make that clear. We are not doing anything to close either campus any earlier than next summer. And that's not even a guarantee that we will close one. I just want it stated unequivocally that we are not closing either campus any earlier than next summer. On the first Sunday of live worship at both campuses, we were over 200 people. I think today we were closer to about 170, 180, which to me is not bad when you consider school's almost out and people are starting to head out of town. So that's all to you, and I want to thank you as we reinvigorate live services in both campuses. We're going to continue the 6-month congregational discussion about whether we can, whether we should, whether we are able to keep a 2-campus ministry. And that by October, we need to start making some decisions. We'll at that point have had 6 months to talk. We'll have more financial information the cadre's got to provide to where we are at, to get, again, to use a militarism, and I apologize, too many years in the military to get away from it. It'll give us a vector check to know where we are going and which direction we're going in. And then at that point, we'll look at the possibly selling the parsonage if the next senior pastor doesn't need it. However, I want it noted, and I realize it's small print on these slides, is that is collateral for the mortgage. So selling the parsonage does not provide us free cash. It's money that will be immediately used to pay down the principal of the mortgage. I think Doug has talked about that extensively, and so has Mike Brandos during our discussions for our Renewing Our Legacy campaign. Just want to make sure that that is understood by everybody, that it doesn't, say we sell that for $500,000, it's not all of a sudden $500,000 that we can use for our operating budget. It would simply go to pay down the mortgage. And with that, next slide, go ahead and turn it over to Cadre.
you, Jan. Again, my name is Kadri Gallas-Selek, and I serve as the treasurer on PLC at this time. And I'm going to just in a few slides give you a update and some reminders about our financial situation. So, as a church, when it comes to finances, we have two objectives, two goals. One is to meet our operating or day-to-day costs, and the other one is to continue to serve our mortgage. That's to make monthly mortgage payments. And as a reminder from our last forum, we have seen this trend now over several years that our biggest source of income, the offerings, we continue to fall short about 10 to 15% per year. And this trend has been continuing this year. And so what I have on this slide, you can see that our budgeted income from offerings is 1.47 million. Let's see. And the second column there shows how much of it we have received so far. We are behind the budget by about $155,000, and also maybe even more significantly because, as we have talked about, budget is always a plan. It is a plan. But we are also behind our income from offerings compared to last year. So as compared to last year, for the same period from January to April last year, for that period we received about $57,000 more in income from offerings than we have received this year. And so that's the concerning trend there. So that's really what I wanted to highlight with this information. So we are behind compared to last year, and we are also even more so behind compared to our budget. Okay, next slide, please. And so in this slide is our best estimate or projection for our general fund income for this year. And when it comes to mortgage, then, well, mortgage payments have two parts, the principal and the interest. And we pay our mortgage interest from our general fund. So that's an expense that shows up in the budget because our budget expenses are funded from general fund, and then from the principal is funded from dedicated principal funds. And so here, projection for our general fund, we have taken into account actual offerings from January to March, because that was not part of the Renewing Our Legacy campaign, but that was the end of Living Our Legacy campaign. So that contributes towards the 1.47 million as well. We received in pledges from this year's Renewing Our Legacy appeal for the general fund, 718,000. And then Cynthia crushed some numbers and came up with a best conservative estimate. How many more offerings can we receive from members who have a history of regular giving, but they may not have submitted a pledge? And so if we add all of those numbers up, then we still have a remaining goal, and I'm using positive language here, so that's the remaining goal, not estimated loss, of 244,000. Okay, and then on the right-hand column, we also see the current state of the mortgage appeal part of Renewing Our Legacy campaign. So out of the $300,000 goal, we have received 253,000. And that, thankfully, that's sufficient to cover our mortgage principal payment next year in 2024. Okay? But then the concerning part, of course, is that we are still projecting, anticipating possible budget shortfall of general fund, 200 to $240,000. Okay, next slide, please. And so here, again, as a reminder about our mortgage situation, as of mid-May, as of last payment, we have a remaining balance of 4.5 million, okay? And currently our monthly mortgage payment is about 27,000 a month, and that is principal and, well, reduced principal and interest as well. And next year, starting in March, it will go up. It will go up because since 2019, we have been benefiting from an arrangement with Trivent where we received a relief in our principal payment for 5 years, and now that will end next March, and our monthly mortgage payment will go up to $38,000 a year, okay? A month, yeah, sorry. So that's about a $11,000 increase per month. Also, just want everyone to remember that all of our real estate, that's the 2 buildings of our 2 campuses, as well as the parsonage, are as collateral to our mortgage, okay? So if we were to sell our parsonage, well, the proceeds would go to the bank, to Trivent. So we would not be able to use the proceeds from that to cover our any shortfall, okay? But now, again, the good thing is that we have the principal payment from our previous campaign, Living Our Legacy, for this year, and also we have received sufficient pledges for next year's principal payment. And interest payment, of course, continues to come from the general fund. Okay? And next slide, please. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's, I've already stated all of that. And now, well, I would say the immediate concerning part is the shortfall, expected shortfall in our general fund to cover our daily operating costs. And that's it from me. Gail?
Over. Audrey. Okay. Yeah, good morning. My name's Gail Jackson. I know many of you, but not all of you. And I am a member of the PLC as a member at large. So I am delighted to be able to share with you the summary of the survey results from the May survey. I don't know if that's this that's causing that feedback. Okay, thank you. And just want to emphasize how important your feedback and your comments are to help to shape our thinking and kind of take the temperature of where the congregation is. So congregational input is just so essential. We had 74 responses to the survey that was that we held during the May 7th forum, and then subsequently the online survey that went out. As you see, 32 of those were from that May 7th forum, and then we had an additional 42 from online. I want to walk you through each of the questions, and what we have here is really some of the themes. Now understand that what we tried to do was to summarize the themes, so if you're not going to necessarily see individual input, we'd be here for a much longer period of time this morning. But there were some themes that we want to share. So question 1 was, how do you feel about the information that has been provided at that last meeting? Very similar to what we've already shared this morning, which is a bit of a recap. There were some common emotions that we saw in the responses, some level of sadness, but there was also a hopefulness that came through in what many of you shared. Also, there was relief as well as concern. So you kind of had the spectrum of emotions. And then others that maybe we didn't have as much mention of, but they still came out. Some disappointment, some positive thinking, some felt that what we presented was sobering. There was some anger, as well as some fear for the outcome of this church if we ended up selling a campus. So I'm going to go to the second slide on this one. So themes from the responses to question 1. There was appreciation for transparency. People wanted to know, like, okay, what's really going on here? And that we were trying to take a realistic stance. And many of you indicated that the information was not a surprise. Just happy that we're talking about it. There was relief that the 2-campus situation is being addressed. And that in some cases, people felt that that was an overdue conversation. We also have concerns about potential for losing members if we end up selling one of the campuses, of course. And some regret, sadness, and anger, as I mentioned earlier, about our current situation. There was acknowledgement that perhaps we're living in a new post-COVID reality. And there were a couple of requests for more information specifically related to attendance and giving by campus and total membership. So people looking for some data. There was also encouragement to applying creative solutions to this problem, to take action, and to keep the congregation involved. So that was question 1. Question 2 was, what ideas do you have for resolving the challenge of maintaining 2 locations for our ministry? And we grouped these responses. I say we, it was actually, Kadri did a lot of the work, pulling up all of the work, all right, pulling together and summarizing this. She did a fabulous job. So we grouped these responses into 4 different bins. So the first one, I think, which was the biggest bin, was ideas around rent, where there were 19 mentions, or selling maybe a campus or both campuses and doing something else, 13 mentions. So some of the comments associated with that: we should investigate selling both campuses, buy or build in a new location. That was one idea that's been put out there. That we should rent if we must, but keep both campuses if we can. Some thinking that if we rented out space, that we should continue to use both sanctuaries and keep the preschools. Idea that we should be exploring partnership options, and that we need to develop a long-range vision for Lord of Life, and then plan what facilities and resources are needed. Okay, the second bin was about expanding membership, and some ideas for doing that. And there is work underway, actually, to pursue some of these ideas and generate more. There's outreach via outside advertising, increasing hospitality, and social events. That was an idea that came up as a theme. Also, the importance of greeters and follow-up communication to connect with visitors and new members. So, make a note of that. If you know anybody who's interested in being a greeter, as I understand it, we're still looking for more greeters, but that's certainly something that's key. The importance of calling a new pastor for expanding membership. Connecting more intentionally with preschool and vacation Bible school families. So an idea being that, if we have people who don't belong to this, to our congregation, but they're coming here, or the kids are coming for VBS, how do we, maybe formalize or reach out to them more? Renewing our mission, highlighting what is unique about Lord of Life and the inclusiveness that is part of Lord of Life, and engaging more members in active ministry, and asking for a specific time commitment from members. So those were some of the ideas associated with expanding membership. Then there was a third bin that was about bolstering our finances. And this included stimulate increased offerings, including by messages from the pulpit, increasing volunteers so that we could reduce staff hours. That came up. And then there were a number of ideas about new sources of income, such as having fundraisers or GoFundMe campaigns, seeking grants for external ministries, or somehow doing contractor work with the government, seeking sponsors for Lord of Life community events, selling ads in church communications. Some churches do that. Getting loans from members, restructuring the mortgage, and the idea of perhaps putting all funds to paying current debts. We're not, so that was the group of responses around finances. And then finally, other thoughts. say those things that maybe don't fit in a specific bin, but we really want to share. One was, live services on both campuses with pastor, music, education, and hospitality. That idea that we need to keep having a modern service. At least one person indicated they're not comfortable with Lord of Life becoming a landlord. Selling one campus, thought that selling one campus would be the end of both campuses. That was a concern. A need to return to traditional values of Christianity. The idea that we need to adjust in the new post-pandemic reality, that we should conduct additional surveys among members, and don't try to do too much. So that's pretty much what we heard, and we're really grateful for all of that input and that people made the time to have those conversations and record them at the Fairfax campus on May 7th and then also online. So, any questions about that? I'm not sure I could answer much more. It's really just reporting back what we heard, right? So that's the end of the results, and we want to actually use this as an opportunity to do another kind of a survey activity because, as I said at the beginning, having your input and constant feedback is just so essential that everybody stay engaged. So we are going to this short activity, and I think Mary Grace and Julie are going to distribute sheets of paper. And we're going to ask you again to get together if you're willing and able to get together in groups of 3 or 4 people. You may want to cross the aisle to do that, or whatever, or with some friends, or if you prefer to do it yourself, that's fine. And we're going to ask you to first write down talk about these questions and write down your answers so that we can collect them. And you'll see on your sheet the questions are number one and number 1. What are your reactions to what you heard today? And just like this is kind of, again, taking the temperature of the congregation. So we want to know what your reactions are. The other thing we would like to know is, what are we missing? As we've shared information, as we've raised, what the concerns are, where we are, here are some ideas. Particularly for the PLC, and the staff, what is it is there anything that we're missing that we should be thinking about and we're not? And that would be really, really helpful. Now, we'll mention that there will be a further opportunity, because we do intend to send this out, in an online format later. So if you think of something else, you'll have another chance. But let's just take a few minutes. You can write down your responses, and then I'd like to ask you to maybe take 5 minutes to talk to whoever's near you, and then we're going to just have a brief sort of readout of what you talked about. Okay? Everybody got to have a piece of paper? Have someone to talk to?
But I want to, as part of this conversation part, I want to give some opportunity. Do you mind if I?
After the readout?
After this.
signal.
All right, why don't we go ahead and finish up our discussions? Obviously, we don't want to stop the discussions. We'll just go ahead and finish them up for now. And I realize that we don't have two number ones. It's supposed to be 1 and 2, but forgive our typo. What I'd like to do at this point is there anyone that would be willing to share either their individual thoughts or their group's conversation with the other members of the church? If so, if you could come up to the mic. Hopefully we've got one or more people would be willing to share. Just come on up. Just go ahead and come on up, please.
I have a teacher voice. You really
Yes, we do, because we've got people streaming. Unfortunately, screaming doesn't work. Well, I mean, even a teacher voice doesn't work for online.
for simulcast we need.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully I'm going to restate this correctly. So please, if I don't quite get it,
Hold on. There's a mic problem.
Let me try again.
There we go.
We were talking about how we feel like we need to come together as a group and unify what our mission is, what our desires of the church are, and where we're going to go. And part of it was like the comment about don't do too much kind of was like scared me, because I think we need to do as much as we can and go beyond that, so we're not just like holding back. But we also have to be reasonable with what we can do as much as we can. So I don't want people just to sit and do nothing type of thing, thinking that's all we can do. And we talked about how we all have our own interests and our own things that we become passionate about, and we have to come together as a group. What do we want for our church? What do we want as our congregation? Not for us just now, but for the people who are coming after us. Where do we want the church to go after we've retired and moved out of the area, after we have passed along? What do we want for this group for the long haul? Is kind of the direction. Did I say pretty much I mean, we talked about other little things and whatnot, but I think that was the essence of what was important about what we said.
Did you get into my brain? Because that's what we were just talking about in the front.
Well, hopefully a lot of people were talking about that.
And that's, Elaine, I think to the point that why I asked for the microphone back from Gail is that one of the things that as a church we haven't really done well in the last 2 to 3 years, because of events, not because there hasn't been a desire to do it, is that strategic planning. What does the church look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Kathy, who is a member of the PLC, is fond of saying, and has said it many times, it's your vision and your mission that drives your needs, not the other way around. It's not your budget that drives your mission. It's the other way around. And if you don't know where your vision is taking you, then you don't know where you're going, and you're going to end up probably lost.
And
so that's the point. I was glad to hear that.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about, is like we need to get get clear our mission statement, which a lot of organizations use, get that clear again in our heads as to what we want as a group. And again, it's really hard because we all get passionate about all our little things that we can do in mission for Christ, but maybe that has to be different. I mean, I kind of mentioned I'm more of a traditionalist. I really enjoy the traditional services, but yet at Centerville, where it's easier for me to worship, just being really honest, it's contemporary right now. But I then have to grow, and it's not that I hate contemporary, but it's just not my thing, but I have to grow as a person to appreciate that, because that's what we need for this church right now. And I have to kind of let that go to the wayside instead of, oh, it's contemporary. I mean, and I don't really feel that way. Contemporary is just not my preference.
I understand.
So anyway, that's what we said.
Anybody else?
And you don't have to come up, you can talk from where you are, but you will need the mic.
Mike's coming up.
Okay, on?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, a couple things from our group. One of the questions is, when we consider selling a campus, or both campuses for that matter, do we have a realistic assessment of what that value is? You know, who is going to buy it? What are they willing to pay? And, you know, is that realistically going to be able to provide us what we need moving forward? Or are we kind of whistling in the wind at that point? The other thing that I would comment on was really the statement about the vision. And I want to give an example. My sister and brother-in-law's church in Richmond have been working on this for 10 years. And they have a consortium, if you will, of churches around them assessing, because I think, 7 of the churches in their group, it's a Missouri Synod church, it's a circuit, are without pastors, or they've got issues they have to deal with. And so my sister and brother-in-law's church has taken the tack of the most important thing for the future of the church is families with young children. And they will say, and he said it directly to me, we're not kicking old people out, seniors out, but that's not our focus. We need to focus on families with young children. And they have done a fantastic job with preschool, learning center, and so on. And they've done a number of other things too, focused on families. And when I'm thinking about, okay, if we're going one way or another, well, okay, if we wanted to focus on seniors, we've got a fantastic new senior complex going in about a mile from Fairfax. That would be the preferable location for that. If you want to focus on families with young children, we've got a basement here that's just waiting to be finished, preschool, other opportunities. We've got 3 schools within a half mile for after-school programs from anywhere from kindergarten to high school. It's almost a sharp divide, and it's going to be, I think, a difficult decision to say, if we're going one way or the other, because what is our vision? I will emphasize that point. Which way do we feel God is calling us to go?
Thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Ralph?
I approach this probably a little more pragmatically, because I'm a dollar and cents guy. If we're not making enough money, then we got a problem. So ultimately, it's a question about membership. Is our membership increasing? Is it decreasing? I mean, that's all important. I suspect there are a lot of folks out there who are donating, but they're probably holding back some because they're not really sure which direction the church is going to go. So I think I kind of worry about this October 15th date, because that's several months down the road, and we won't have come to a decision at that point. And therefore, I think you're going to have people just saying, ooh, I'm going to stand by and wait here. I don't want my money to go down a rabbit hole somewhere. So sooner is better than later.
And I won't disagree with that at all. It's trying to get enough engagement from the congregation that they feel that this is a decision that they were a part of. If you look around, nothing against everybody here, these are the same people who were here last month. These will be the people that'll be here next month. We don't tend, so, I mean, that's the core. Every church has a core. I mean, we all know that. This is the core, and those who will take the time to watch the video over the next week or two are the core of the congregation. And I just want to make sure that as we make these decisions, this is not Ken Sachs' decision. As Elaine said, I have to set aside my own preferences. I live near Fairfax. Would I prefer, from a completely selfish standpoint, to be at Fairfax? Yes. Does that mean that that's the best answer for this church going forward? Not necessarily. But I hear you, Ralph, that 4 to 6 months sounds like a long time, but when you're dealing with the 3 months of the summer, talking with the fall, getting kids back into school, getting college kids into school, making these kind of decisions, that's not really a long time, though I hear you about the idea, are people holding back? I don't know what explains the $54,000 reduction from COVID-only time to today. No church services to church services. I don't know if that's people holding back, if it's people that have moved. Our attendance right now for the first 2 weeks of the 2 people in person, we're at about 175 to 200 per weekend live in person. Doesn't count, obviously, the views. I don't know what those numbers are. But I hear you. I'm just not sure that we can really move much faster, and I've got to have people that are going, October is too fast of a decision to make. But I'm like you, Ralph. I tend to be more of a bottom line up front kind of guy, and what do we need to do? But I think the key is figuring out that vision, as Elaine and her group said, that the vision of where do we go as a congregation drives what we do, as Mike said just a few minutes ago. I think that's really important. But I absolutely agree. Other comments? Kurt.
Thank you. I agree with Ralph, but I need to speed it up a little bit more. I think we ought to have a committee right now that takes a look at what are the buildings worth, collect all the information on it, parking spaces, square footage, what's improved, what's not improved, what we invested in it, and take a look at the physical facilities. Who's attending the campuses, how many people are giving, and getting all that data together so that when we make a decision, it's an informed decision. And I would submit we need to put them up for sale today. And I don't mean that we sell it today. This is a big building. Both of the campuses are big properties. They're not going to sell in 6 weeks. This isn't something that's in your neighborhood that all of a sudden it's going to go. And you can always turn something down. But if you put it on the market now and get the people in, we will get a real idea of what the value of our properties are at. And we can make an informed decision. But if we don't, and we come to find out that, oh my God, we got to do something right away, that's never a good thing for the seller. It's usually a good deal for the buyer.
I agree. Thank you.
Why am I not surprised, Kurt? Can always depend on Kurt
right
to
here.
be practical.
The camera, that's all.
Is it?
For the camera.
Sorry, hello out there. I think that we are in one of those situations where we have to weigh the practical with the desire for what we are called to do. And I think that this is not an unfamiliar task for congregations or groups of people before they even become a formal congregation who are called to mission. We are called to mission in Fairfax County. We just happen to be unusual because we're in 2 locations in Fairfax County that have fairly distinct personalities. And I've heard some of you say that. Don, you're nodding, and we've talked about this. That doesn't mean that we can't do ministry in 2 locations. I think what we are absolutely called to do right now is to be courageous. And that's very difficult, because when you're faced with the realities of financial shortfalls, you still got to pay the bills. But I also know that each of us in our families have been on lower incomes at one point in our lives, probably when our needs were greatest, when we were starting careers, when we were starting families. And what we had to do is to figure out, How are we going to achieve what we want to as a family? Raise kids who are well educated, who are raised in the church, who have a strong community of faith members, neighbors, school. And to do that, we had to make choices. Some of us lived far away from families, and so we had to create new family communities. Many of us did that through our churches or our neighborhoods. It took courage to take those steps, but it didn't mean we lost the vision of what we hope to achieve within our families. This is our church family. We are called in mission to serve communities that don't know Jesus Christ. Or if they know Jesus, they haven't embraced the community of faith as part of their lives. And I would say that we should be very careful, not slow, Kurt, but careful in deciding how quickly to move to an easy decision. It would be very easy if we can find a buyer to sell a church, take some of the debt away. But does it shortchange what we're ultimately called to do here in this community? Will we have lost an opportunity if we sell Clifton campus? Will we lose the opportunity to serve a lot of the single-parent families just up the road in our apartment complex? Mike did some demographic research. Mike, do you recall the number of single-family homes we had in this area? I'm calling. Single-parent families. I'm sorry?
Roughly a quarter.
Roughly a quarter of the families in this area are single-parent. What could we do to help those families? Anyway, I guess what I'm saying, and certainly the opportunity in the Fairfax campus with senior homes and apartment complexes moving in, what an amazing opportunity for there. We are marvelous at a care ministry. Thank you, Ken and his team. I just don't want us to move beyond or into decisions without really taking a careful look at what we're called to do here. Don't take the easy way out, but absolutely embrace some solutions. I don't know what that solution is. I do know that we need to be calling people who used to sit next to us in the church or in front of us or behind us. And I think that's one of the data points that we need to work on too. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I agree that the key is that we need to set our vision, our mission, what we want to do first, and then figure out how to get there. And second of all, could you call to ask for if anybody watching online has some comments and some input to this as well?
It's not being live streamed, it's only being.
No, it
through-
is. He's got communication with
Oh, you
them.
do, okay. I
they
see
can-
Adam's yes, he's giving me a thumbs up.
Yeah, so if anyone online would like to add, we would love to hear your opinions and your ideas as well.
Great, thank you. No, perfect. Waiting to see if there's any response from online. There are two things that I'd like to propose that adopt and look at both what Kathy was saying and what Kurt was saying. I don't think I need to wait for a PLC meeting to create two committees. One who is willing and able and wants to be part of the strategic vision and view of this congregation that can help draft perhaps what that vision is going to look like. The PLC had intended to try to take care of that last year, and then the issues with Grace in Spaces, the pastor leaving, financials kind of made it's challenged to do that in a deliberate way that I think it needs to be done. So I would like to propose that we have 4 or 5 people with 1 or 2 members of the PLC, perhaps as facilitators, to create a committee to kind of propose what that vision looks like. What is it that we want to accomplish? And the second one is Kurt's idea. I think the idea of a committee that talks about and that gets this data collection on the campuses, I think didn't stop, I should have realized it, Kurt, when you asked that, yes, we should have had that data, because we can't make this decision even in October, as slow as that may seem to some people, if I don't have that data. And so I would look for people who, again, 3 or 4 people who may be willing to step up and meet over the next 2 or 3 months. Sorry, kids are having fun, which is always a good thing, but it does make it a little hard to hear. Who would be willing to step up to help get that data together? Because one of the questions that came up in the last meeting was, well, can we figure out what percentage of the giving comes from the Clifton campus and what percentage of the giving comes from the Fairfax campus? We don't have that kind of data, and we won't, because people who attend pre-COVID, I never came here. I think I came here once pre-COVID when I was from 08 to 13. Afterwards, I've come here many times, as most of you know, and vice versa. I've seen a lot of you who are Clifton people come over to Fairfax. We really don't have that data, and there's no way to really track that. We asked we asked Cynthia if we could track that data, and we don't have that. Plus, I don't think we want to get into a situation as well, Fairfax gives more money, but Clifton has more people, or vice versa. I don't want to get into a he said, she said, back and forth. We had that issue when I first got here in 08. We were really 2 churches, 2 campuses. And that's been the one positive that I've seen from COVID, if there can be a positive, is that I feel more unified between the 2 campuses than I ever did beforehand. But I think getting the data, Kurt, as you suggested, I think is vital to be able to have that information. The last question that was asked last time was about an update from Grace Point on the rental. And the update is that we really don't have much of an update. There's still in conversations with Grace Point, people's travel schedules, leave, vacations. Sorry, it's again the military and me saying leave instead of vacations. Makes it a little difficult sometimes to get schedules together. We will have more information before the, I assume we'll have more information before the next forum, which is July 9th, again here at Clifton. With that, I'm going to open it back up to the floor. Mike, you've got something to follow up?
Just a quick question. I think we also need to factor this, what are we telling the pastors that we are interviewing?
Okay, thank you. I forgot. That was I have a list of things I wanted to talk about, and that was the one that I forgot to write down. I even have the letter C written down, but I couldn't remember what the rest of the word was, and it was call committee. So thank you, Mike. I claim old age, but I'm not that old yet to claim that. The answer is that they are, as you may have seen in Lifelines, they have completed their first round of interviews. There are 1 or more second interviews. We don't know how many that is, and we can't know until the second interviews are done and the call committee makes a recommendation to the PLC on moving forward with any of the candidates that we currently have, or deciding that none of the candidates are a great fit either way, either them to us or us to them, and requesting a new slate. I think the second round of interviews is sometime this month, roughly, is the plan, is to try to do them this month. But again, it's the same schedules of vacations and end of work and people being out of the country. And these are vital meetings that everyone from the call committee needs to be there, has to be there. And so that slows down a little bit how it's going. But I'm still impressed that we even got a full slate of number of candidates that are interested in our ministry, that are interested in partnering and working with us. When there are 7, was that what Pastor Ortiz, Bishop Ortiz said? There was like 7 large churches in this that are looking for lead pastors. We're not alone. But the answer of what information do we share? In fact, I get that question from Keith Taylor, the head of the call committees, to what to share. And at this point, what we are sharing is what's in the MSP. We don't have anything to alter at this point. We may in the future. they're free to communicate that this is an open discussion as to whether or not we're keeping 2 campuses or going down to 1. They're free to share that, but there's no decisions. And I suspect that, I'm hoping, that we've got a viable candidate both ways, for them wanting to come to us and us wanting them to be our pastor, that will be in place before these decisions are finally made, so that we can get input from them. But it may not. The first round of interviews don't always work, as Pastor Shannon and Pastor Lanny well know. So more to follow, Mike. Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Oh my, I thought I was talking loud enough.
The people online can't hear Cadre up front if she's not on a microphone. It's nothing against Cadre's voice. They just can't hear because it's being broadcast.
But what is so beautiful to me coming to the services here is watching the young children who seem to be really enjoying the service, and they're so excited when they get to go up front for something. And it's just beautiful to me seeing that. And yes, I think that the music is maybe a little bit more current than the other services at the Fairfax Church. But it's just so broad, the thoughts in this church and the different groups that help different people be happy in this congregation.
Agreed. Thank you.
So somebody that's versatile is going to be good, just like we've had.
And I agree. I mean, I grew up in a Lutheran church where setting 4 was considered the contemporary service. So anyone who knows the Red Book knows what I'm talking about. And the number of chuckles that I got means that you guys understand what I'm talking about. So I understand, but I think you're right. When I see the young families that are coming in, that Ken Vanderhorst and his team are pushing to bring in, that Alicia is able to continue to support with the youth ministry programs, is vital. I don't remember who said the point about whether or not, what is our vision? I think it was Mike, was saying with the congregation down in Richmond, you really are focused on the kids, because that's what keeps the church going. We all here will likely not be here in 20 years, whether we're here still on earth or have moved on. But the next generation needs to move up. When I came in 2008, the original people who had founded Lord of Life were already moving on. And that's the question of the vision and the mission of this church that a number of you have talked about. And I'm so heartened to hear that everyone is very much in the forefront of their thought. What is it that we are to do to spread God's mission and to his word to the people? And how do we accomplish that? And that's the conversations that are going on. In next month's forum, I'm hoping to have a little more, some options. Next month, we're going to be talking about that more with options, and to provide additional information as a result of today. Pastor or pastor, anything that you guys would like? Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
I just wanted to continue the positivity of some of the statements that were given towards the end. I am incredibly encouraged by this conversation. The transparency and rationality with which we've discussed this means a lot to me, and it gives me a lot of hope that we're going to come to a solution. And I find myself not seeing a church that's divided in thought. Even though we've heard 2 perspectives on the short-term path forward, the pragmatic versus the vision-driven strategic approach is not inseparable. And we can come to a solution, I am confident, that satisfies both. I've been discouraged over the last year, because I think a year ago, many of the people in this room, it was apparent to them that we were going to wind up here, that we were at a point where we had to consider selling one or both campuses. We are talking about this now, okay? And I think ideally, you do the strategy up front, you have your vision, and you have the time to implement. I have been a part of, and I'm sure many people have been a part of organizations that don't do that, and it never ends well. Even on a short leash, I think we can come to an agreement where we are going down a common path and we're able to handle the budgetary constraints. This is not undoable, and I do not hear a church divided. I hear a church coming together, and it gives me great hope.
And the vision that we had, that Pastor Nathan gave us, those three concepts are the core concepts. And what can we do to update them if we need to? But again, making that, to use the term top of mind, that we're focused on. As Don reminded me, it was 1 year ago tomorrow that we met in this facility. And as a congregation, we almost tore ourselves apart because of what was going on with Grace and Spaces. A year later, we may not all be happy with the outcome that came from those discussions, but we are all, at this point, driving in the same direction. And that has to do with the openness, the transparency, the discussions. And your point about unity, I felt that better now than I did 2 years ago. And so I appreciate you bringing that out. Any other comments that people would like to share? Kadri.
I received a question about if we could use dedicated account funds for any other purposes for which than what they were originally meant for. And the only thing I can say about it is that there will be tax implications if we wanted to use them for anything else for which they were meant for. But we can look into, so hopefully next forum we can give you more information if they can be used, and then what would need to be done for that, and if we wanted to do it.
I just was checking to make sure there weren't any comments or questions from online, and there are not. All right, is there anything else before we close at around, 5 minutes after the hour-long time that I had in play?
Just a reminder for those here as well as those online about the survey that will be publishing.
And then tomorrow or Tuesday, there will be a letter that goes out, as well as the survey, just like what we did today. If you have additional comments, or for those who were not here and want to fill that out, please provide that information. As you saw today, 74 people took the time and the energy to write something. That proves effort. That proves desire to help move things forward. Please keep that going. And so, yes, thank you for the reminder, Julie. Anything else? Well, Pastor, do you mind closing us in prayer then?
Just a quick comment. 3 of the last speakers have talked about the unity, the transparency, and so forth. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul writes to the early churches and talks about having a common mind in Christ Jesus, which is one of the reasons that we're having these gatherings, so that we can hear each other and come to a common mind. So as we close today, I'd like to invite you to stand, and let's first of all say our mission statement together, and then I'll have a short prayer. Together, love God, love people, make disciples. Let us pray. Loving God, I thank you very much for those who are here, for those who are online, for those who will be reading the letter and completing the survey in the coming days. I ask that you illuminate us all with your Spirit, your Holy Spirit. Allow us to come to some common minds about how we can meet our obligations and also fulfill the mission that you have called us to in this place, in this community. We ask that you would give us your blessings and that you would allow us to fulfill your ministry and mission in all the ways that are possible with those who are so talented and so full of giving and generosity in this room and in our congregation. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
See me, call me, email me, or email a member of the PLC or Pastor Lanny. Thank you.